Welcome and thank you all for joining us for this very exciting episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that cater to CRE newcomers and industry leaders alike. I am your host, Shanti Ryle, Director of Content Marketing here at Crexi, and today we are so excited to sit down with the one, the only, Don Tepman of Town Center Capital, better known by his online avatar, StripMallGuy. Before we begin, a little bit about our guest. Don Tepman runs Town Center Capital, a real estate fund he founded which focuses on buying neighborhood strip centers throughout the United States. He also runs the StripMallGuy account on social media, which has approximately 325,000 followers across 3 platforms. Wow. And has become a primary deal flow source, which we will get into a little later. Mr. Tepman started his career in 2002 and led his first strip center purchase in 2006. He has completed 45 purchases and raised over $150 million in LP capital. Now based in New York City, Mr. Tepman graduated from Santa Clara University with a finance degree and grew up in Cupertino, California. It's weird calling you Mr. Tepman. It's just Don.
Weird, I know. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great and pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to finally have you sitting down. I think we've been planning this for the last 3 years or so.
Yep.
So finally making it happen. So
Today's
stoked.
finally here.
Yes. And we got a lot to cover today. So I know we just read through your bio, read through a little of your background, but I'd love to hear about your career path in your own words. So to kick us off, tell us a little bit more about where you're from, Cupertino, and how you first got your start in commercial real estate.
Sure, yeah. It really came out of nowhere for me. I had no plans of entering the real estate world at all. I graduated from college in 2002, so the whole .com thing had just crashed. Like many of my peers, I had a startup during college in 1999, 2000, and that quickly went away. And so, I was a 22-year-old and looking for a job and was connected to someone who was a local broker in the strip mall space. So he was doing leasing and sales, and it was commission only, and he interviewed me, and I didn't really understand what the job was in that 1-hour interview, but he seemed to be doing well, and so I took the job kind of being open-minded, and it was a no-salary job, and, here's a book to cold call out of, good luck sort of thing. So
Yeah. And I can imagine, growing up in Cupertino, you're around all this tech, all these entrepreneurs. You said you had a startup. Did you ever think you would go back to tech, or did the bug just bite you when you started working as a broker?
No, I mean, I was on Monster.com every day, probably that first 4 months.
Yeah. Wow, Monster.com.
Yeah, no, that was the recruiting
throwback. Yeah, that's so funny.
Wasn't that long ago now. No, so I wasn't sure how I would make money and, if it was going to stick at all. And so I had friends that were working at Google, et cetera, entry-level jobs, and no one doing anything, super exciting. But, little did I know that, just by virtue of living in San Francisco in 2002 and going out, meeting new friends, I was interacting with and meeting folks that were actually building Web 2.0. So, which, a lot of that base became my LP base later. So.
Yeah, that's a nice little source to tap right there. So you're starting out there at this brokerage in the strip mall space. Can you tell us the story of your first deal?
Yep.
And when that real estate bug really bit you and you're like, okay, this is something that can be a career for me.
Yeah, so I think that happened well before my first deal. So, in 2002, the gentleman that was working under had around 70 shopping centers that he was the leasing agent for. So I ended up taking a lot of those sign calls, right? And so a lot of those businesses that reached out weren't necessarily a fit for that property, but I asked them, what if I helped you find space, right? So I kind of naively would meet with a nail salon or a little ethnic market and try to look around for space for them. And what that taught me was, how do they look at site selection, parking ratios, traffic counts, where they want to be, how much rent they can pay, where in the shopping center they really want to be, pros and cons of each space within the center, signage, all these kind of nerdy, inside baseball things, right?
Yeah.
And so meeting with these entrepreneurs really for me was a game changer, because just watching their enthusiasm, being around them was just, I felt brought me energy. And then watching someone with an idea turn it into reality and then change their life and then open more locations was something great. There's really something about meeting with that tenant directly who will be there every single day, and I love national tenants, of course, but it's different when it's that person whose coffee shop it is and they're nervous and they want to make it work. And so, I fell in love in the business at that point, as I started doing actual leasing deals.
Yeah.
What I noticed, though, in doing that is that there were many inefficiencies within the strip mall space, like, spaces that were vacant that shouldn't have been vacant, tenants that were paying maybe a lot less than they should or could be paying, because really, 95% of these properties are not owned by institutions. So there's a lot of room for, adding value. And so in about 4 years in 2006, there's a property that was, hitting the market for about $1.4 million. And there's a space in the back that had no visibility on the street that was vacant. And I thought, wait a minute, I can lease that space by creating visibility by, spending $5,000, $10,000, whatever it was, on a monument sign on Fremont Boulevard in Fremont, California, your name here. And so I got really excited. I called everyone I knew. I think I saved like $100,000 or something after 4 years. I put, most of my money I saved into that deal.
Wow.
And just, I think through my, enthusiasm, a lot of my, some colleagues at work, friends, 40,000 here, 80,000 here. So I raised $400,000 on that deal.
Yeah.
One of the people that didn't want to invest was happy to do the loan for us. It's kind of an easy loan. So got a private loan for $1 million. Bought the property for $1.4 million.
Yeah.
Monument sign, leased the space, sold it a year later for $1.8 million.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone doubled their money. And so to me, I didn't think that was a business. I more wanted the commission when I sold the property as a broker, right?
Yeah.
And and for me, doubled my equity, which was crazy. And so that was when I fell in love with it, because investors were like, "Can you do this again?" And a version of that same property is exactly what we still do now, 45 purchases later.
Yeah, the two things I really keyed in on there was, number one, it's the family businesses, the passion, the care, the attention to detail, and also their expertise, because it is their livelihood.
Correct.
And I think I heard a quote recently that was, some companies make decisions about real estate around the business table. These people make decisions around the kitchen table.
100%.
Yeah. And so I can understand how that entrepreneurial fire is catching in a way. And I also really love that your passion for it led to your first investment in it, and you didn't even think of it as investment, more just here's this really cool thing that I can do for this group of businesses. Hey everyone, let's go in. I see this idea, I'm excited by it, and let's make it happen. And you did. It
was a win-win.
Yeah.
Right? So our investors did well. That tenant stayed for, I think it's still there. And we also had money to make the parking lot better. We replaced the old awnings that were there. So there's things that we do to clean up the site as well. And ultimately that's great for the businesses, but also when I resell and the property looks great, it sells for more money usually. So it's I can always look for a win-win overall for everybody.
It's making the world better in a way that does make money, but it is making the world better.
A win-win. Pie is large and growing. That's how you kind of have to look at it.
Yeah, I love that abundance mindset.
There you go. That's the word.
So we talked a bit about learning the people, learning the inside baseball of what the tenants actually want in an ideal space. Did you have any mentors? You mentioned your first boss, but any people that kind of taught you key skills, maybe about how to talk to these tenants, or any other lessons that you still apply to every deal that you come across?
So I think, so I basically had two mentors in business, but I think before that, I spent much of my high school years as an usher at the San Jose Arena. And
That's awesome.
so there's a guy named Jim Goddard there that was, head of the arena, who was like a master in the arena world and guest services, and like, he actually ended up working for him directly on side projects. But I think like just learning how patience with people, and how to give the extra service, and like, and I think that really helped me going into the real estate world and dealing with tenants, et cetera, investors later on. So I think that was a good primer.
Yeah.
And then a couple years into the business, I sent out a big mailer. I think I sold a property. I sent a big just sold mailer, and there was a gentleman that was like maybe 3 or 4 years older than me, named Danny. Leave it at that. And he called me off the postcard, wanted to meet, and I think he had done 20 strip mall deals already by then. And like he was so excited about the business, and I was just like, I was blown away by how easy it was for him, and how much he understood. Like when he saw property today, it wasn't about what it was today. It was about what it will be in 5 years. And like, and so he started teaching me as much as I wanted to learn. And so I was like 24, I would spend hours, on nights and weekend on the phone with him at his house with his family, asking questions. He would tell me stories. And, he's like a Steph Curry of the strip mall world. It's like he works hard, but he was born with it. He gets it. He sees it. And so the guy never went to college, and he's just that blue collar person that started selling sneakers at the flea market at age of 12. And so he just knows the business. He and I still talk strip malls literally every day. We text every day. And so that was, I think the biggest difference maker is just for him, watching how easy it was. Like I would sell him deals, and he would just like, oh, I just need 14 days for due diligence. And I was like, what? It's like his inspections would be like a walkthrough.
Yeah.
He would close all cash. He was like, well, I'm going to buy it and then buy out the, aquarium store, because they're going to go out of business anyway. And they're, all their employees park in front. They're killing my parking. And then I'll create a patio. Like he had the idea on day one. He was never looking at what the property was today, right?
Yeah.
It's always what will it be. And so, I just kind of learned a lot, as much as I could from him, and just like was a sponge. And so he's really the real strip mall guy in many ways. The guy has no website, no office. And so, that's been a mentor, definitely. That's been
I love that.
Is a blessing.
I wanna ask around. Maybe we'll do a Twitter poll and say, if this guy's Steph Curry, who are you in the space?
I wish he came to the gala last year. He almost came, but he's very shy.
Yeah.
And so maybe this year he'll show up last minute.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
No, what was the point I was gonna make?
Mentorship.
It was about mentorship. Yeah, I think being around somebody who has such a creative spirit, especially in real estate, where a lot of folks main job is to be problem solvers.
Correct.
And figure out innovative ways that are gonna, like you said, create a bigger pie, add value. I'm sure being able to see that creative force in action, and then in turn exercise your own creative muscle, has only served you like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I would sell them deals, say it was listed for 2.5, and be like, okay, make an offer. He goes, okay, just, I don't know, 2.3, 2.6, 2.5, I don't really care. And I'm like, he's like, it didn't matter. It was $100,000 up or down. He wasn't trying to win and get every penny he could.
Yeah.
He already had that vision. He knew it was worth 4 in his mind. So if it was 2.4 or 2.7 or 2.6, he never really cared. He was just like, okay, that's fine. I don't care. Just, send it over. I'll sign it. And then I would watch him buy it at that 2.5, do this and that, and then sell it at that 4 million, whatever it was. So just watching it in action was just like thrilling.
Yeah.
It really was. It was
a master at work.
The guy's a magician.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Yeah. I'm curious, how have you tried to exercise that creative muscle in your own projects? And we'll get more into what your playbook looks like, but have you, as you've been investing in all of these strip malls, have you had any moments where you're like, wow, that was such a great slam dunk of creativity. I'm so proud of this problem I solved. And then conversely, have there been any moments where you're like, okay, that didn't quite go as I wanted it to? I'd love to hear any stories you have.
So, I do take a lot of pride in, maybe too much in how the building will look ultimately, because it sounds a little corny, but you really are making a difference in that community. It's like folks that drive by that old kind of ugly strip center for 20 years, and now it's like revitalized. There's stores that are now leased, jobs created. Mm-hmm. So the one that I'm really proud of is there's a Blockbuster video in San Jose at Capitol and McKee. Yeah, I love Blockbuster, right? And we bought it as they were kind of slowly winding down, and I was there on the day that it closed, and folks lost their job, and so we took that center and that building and made it into a strip center with Panda Express, T-Mobile, and Chipotle. So
the Trinity.
Yeah, no, exactly. So suddenly you have this old Blockbuster that now is like a nice building, which I think that we made nicer than we needed to, but and so then it was cheap to do. It was like 2010. It was much cheaper, and so 30, 40 jobs were created, right? Versus Blockbuster that had maybe 6 employees that went to zero, and now you have all these jobs created. And so I went back there a few years ago. We ended up selling the property. We bought it for like $2 million. We added $1 million and sold it for like 5 or 4, 5 or 5, whatever it was. And so it was a win from that perspective. But then a few years ago, I drove by and seeing people in the patio, eating their Panda
Chipotle,
Express with their family or Chipotle, and just knowing that you have something to do with that, and like recalling how we with our architect went back and forth on the patio. How big should it be? Where should it be? Should we put these kind of railings? And it's just like you think about that, how it was like a mess of a building. It looked like a demo site, and now it's like a beautiful part of the community where folks meet each other, people go on dates, etc. And so I think that's very rewarding. I mean, it's very much back to that win-win. So
it's creative expression, but it's also an of service creative expression. So it's kind of dual purpose. It has use and beauty, which I bet is very satisfying.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
It really is.
So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the strip mall guy investment thesis, I would love to know, from that first deal, when you were just asking questions, like getting people to buy into the idea of, I think I can add value to this, to where you are now.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you say, 42 deals later?
45th. We just bought one in Temecula, California last
That's
week.
my hometown.
Come on.
Wait, where?
Yeah.
Where'd you buy?
On Jefferson and Winchester.
Yeah.
Behind the gas station. It's like a taqueria there.
Yes.
Come on.
Is it like Gilberto's or something?
I think so.
Yeah. That makes me
Breaking
so happy.
news. That's funny.
Ugh.
We just had a moment.
Yeah. I love Temecula. It's a very sweet town. Great wine if you're in the area.
Yeah.
But how has your thinking evolved with those 45 deals? And if you could go back to your 22-year-old self, what would you tell him to maybe get him on the path a little faster?
So I think that like a mistake I made early on was buying into the idea that real estate is only local and you really have to stick to your local market. I think that is a very limited old belief. If you understand the strip center space, it's really the same variables apply in the suburbs of Chicago as LA or in Tucson, where we bought a deal last year as well. And so I think that was a mentality that I later learned was incorrect. I mean, even going as far out, like an hour east of where I lived, let's say in Tracy, California, I wouldn't even look at that market. Be like, no, I don't know it. But then later on, once I kind of made that jump, our best deals have been those deals in markets that I've never been to before, because a lot of times there's a fewer people looking at them, and I think a lot of investors create barriers like I'm not going to buy over there, I'm not going to buy based on this traffic count. I'm like, if a deal's a good deal, buy it. Don't limit yourself to where is the deal. I think that's very old school. Google Earth changed the game, right? Like 20 years ago, that site that we bought in Crown Point, Indiana, I would have to drive there. I'd have to fly there. I mean, it'd be impossible to kind of get, your head around lay of the land. Now within a minute you kind of have a pretty good sense, and then you look at what the exit cap rates are in that market and what the rents are, price per foot. There's different variables that apply, like no matter where you're buying, but you got to know your niche really, really well. Like, So.
Yeah, that's an interesting reframe because location.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
location doesn't matter if you really understand what your product is and who the people are you're serving.
Correct.
Which, I think, like you said, in the suburbs of these regions, there are a lot of commonalities. So let's get into that then.
Sure.
Just to start us off, across all these different places, these different deals, your playbook, you've said, is mostly the same because of all these variables. So what are the core things that you look at if a broker comes to you and says, hey, I got this strip mall in blah town?
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
Number one, I pull up an aerial, okay, and I want to know what the price per foot is, okay, because if you are in the Bay Area and it's $800 a foot, like it doesn't matter, nothing else matters about that deal. It's very rich. And it's going to be fully stabilized, which is fine. It's just like I cannot add value to a property that's already stabilized. If you're $400 a foot in the Bay Area, that's a good starting point. Now in the Chicago suburbs, $400 a foot would be the $800 a foot in the Bay Area. If you look at Tucson, maybe $250 a foot is the $800 a foot of the Bay Area, which is the point. So you price per foot tells you not everything, but it tells you a whole lot, right? And then the aerial is huge, right? Like, how does it lay out? Is the elbow half the building, right? If it's $500 a foot, why is that? Is there still upside because the end cap is being leased to a gym that doesn't need an end cap and its lease expiring next year? That could move to the elbow maybe. So what can I do to this property that through my actions will increase the value? So I'm not a believer in buying property because you think it's going to go up in value. People do it, right? It's a common thesis. You're really just banking on rents going up and interest rates going down if that's what you're doing, which is okay, but you have zero control over that, right? So for me, I need to say, okay, you know what? That is a vacant space that shouldn't be vacant, right? That liquor store who's paying $4,000 and convincing that seller that they can't pay $4,100, where every liquor store in the market's paying $7,000, and he's packed every weekend. I'm gonna look at that and say, hey, you're paying $4,000, it should be $7,000. You know that, I know that. By definition, a viable tenant can pay a fair market rent. I don't want $1 more or less than what the fair market rent is based on comps, and so. That's the whole game plan. It's like, is the property being run efficiently? And also, I think that the whole term value add gets thrown around and it's really lost meaning. I mean, we have like 5-hour asset management meetings on like a $3 million deal. It's like, okay, the stucco vendor is thinking that we should do it this way. The awnings are now late. How do we resource different materials for, the veneer stone? I mean, we're getting in there and like really working hard to add value, not just using it as like a catchphrase that everyone now says it's value add fund.
It's a descriptor. Yeah.
It is. And so, to us, every deal is rolling up our sleeves. We're grinding to add the value ourselves. And it's like, and I get asked, why don't you graduate to grocery anchored or what have you? Like the folks running those centers, the Kimcos of the world, Regencies, they're really, really good at what they're doing, right? And so like they're not going to sell a property where the rents are like well below market or there's a vacancy that needed to be filled that wasn't, and so the folks that we buy from are not really in the business anymore, and so they're just letting that property deteriorate. Grandpa bought it 50 years ago, but now the 9 cousins aren't really into figuring out how to most efficiently get the best pokey restaurant in town to take their end cap. And so we look for properties where we can add value through our actions.
And again, it goes back to that creative spirit, and I think something that you and your team have that really differentiates from, say, institutional capital coming in is that willingness to roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty. And that doesn't necessarily scale the way I think some people who are just looking at it from a pure balancing the book perspective.
No one's ever said
does.
that, and I totally agree. No one's ever asked me that question, and I can go on and on about it. I 100% agree.
Oh, do please, let's do it.
Yeah, great. So, look, I mean, you know, everyone talks about 95% of these properties are not owned by institutions, et cetera. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Real estate is about scale, right? If you are buying a property that's $4 million and adding value, it's the same effort as buying a $40 million property and adding value. But, you know, that $40 million property will make you 10 times more money. Okay. It's hard to find good deals at scale, right? And so there's that market for good deals in America that actually trade is not a huge market.
Especially with the way interest rates are and all that
yeah,
stuff.
there's a whole other debate.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, if you're a fund that, right, is looking to deploy $500 million, like average strip center, let's say, is $5 million. What are you going to buy 100 properties over that 3 year? I mean, it's just literally
That's
crazy. Well, and right, if you are going to do that and just buy properties, stabilized properties, that's fine. But like, you know, that nail salon that pays $1,500, $2,000 a month, when you're redoing their lease and your lawyer is getting paid $1,000 an hour, that lawyer is going to eat up a year of rent. Okay, so real estate needs scale. That renewal is going to be harder than, let's say, with, you know, Starbucks or whatever, because that tenant a lot of times doesn't, you know, is not excited about your 50-page lease and needs a little bit more hand-holding, which we'll do. We'll go out there, we'll, you know, sit with them, explain to them, like, you know, do all that. And so, you know, you have to have some pretty good upside in order to offset the hassle factor of these deals. And it's just like, you know, there's just not a lot of true upside deals that sell in America, period. Like, you know, these things don't, you know, don't turn over that often. That's why, you know, going back to my point earlier, focusing on one market, there's just not enough deals that trade in the U.S., you know, let alone in one market, to really make it work. And so I think that you really have to have a small team, laser focus, and, you know, finding the deal is really, really hard. And so I think that, you know, while these funds are going into the asset class, they're not buying true value add deals where it's like, you know, really grinding and rolling up those sleeves, which is great, you know. So I think a lot of those funds are, you know, end up buying stabilized deals, which is great for us, for instance.
Yeah, because you get to sell
Exactly.
after
Win-win.
you've added the value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we sell them, right, they look great, they're stable. We recruit great tenants with experience, multiple locations, and so, you know, when you're buying from us, they're pretty turnkey. They're, you know, in really good shape, but it does take a buyer who knows how to operate them, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, and we'll get more into this. I think I have questions more about where institutional capital is going and kind of like what that means for the tenant who maybe is getting their lease bought out by, not from like yourself, but somebody who's more just looking at their balance sheet. But going back to you're analyzing a deal, looking into it. I guess actually let's take a step back. How do you find deals in the first place?
The brokers.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, finding ways to work with brokers is the holy grail of the whole business, right? And so brokers are busy. They're not paid on salary. It's commission only. So, like, you know, they don't like to waste their time. And so our narrative, I think, is what brings us deals, which, you know, being a broker, I know what brokers want to hear, right? And I mean, it's simple. It's like, you know, we're going to buy all cash. It takes away the uncertainty of, okay, he's going to get a lender, you're going to get appraised, it takes forever, it's going to take 2 months, certainty of close. Number 2, we need no hand holding, right? Like, we don't need any convincing. We don't need that broker taking time out of their day. Okay, Don and team, you know, here's the property, here's why I like it, look at the demographics, look at the left turn lane, look at the signage. Like, we don't need any of it whatsoever. So it saves them a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
there's not a broker on our end, so we're not after any of their commissions. A lot of buyers out there in the strip mall space get a license so that they can participate in the fee. I think that creates a conflict that we don't touch $1 of that commission.
Yeah, because you're going to get the return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, we don't.
At the end of the day,
we're not competing with the brokers. Like,
Yeah.
how do you ask for deals if you're going to then compete with the brokers?
Yeah.
Like, good luck. And to the extent that we can, we of course let them then resell it for us when we resell one day.
Yeah.
And so we make it easy, make it fluid. We're also beyond the brokers. A few big institutions in the last couple of years have sold us deals. It's been public information. So like Torino, which is a $5 billion industrial REIT, sold us a deal last year. And, I think that we provide that surety of close for sellers that know, hey, they know what they're doing, they're cash, they're going to close, right? And I think a lot of institutions that own strip malls don't really have that with going to like a random mom and pop buyer that doesn't have a brand. You're getting, in bed with them and not sure if they'll close. And, for an institution, their team is spending a lot of time during due diligence, which, costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And just, employee time. So a buyer dropping that deal is expensive. So, we're in a way creating a national brand now through social media that tells, kind of like Coke. It's like, hey, if you're thirsty, have a Coke with us.
Yeah.
If you want to sell your strip mall, come to
We'll
us.
take it.
Right, exactly. and so it's making it easy for the brokers, and also having that national brand presence.
I love that perspective because you don't often hear investors talking about, you're almost selling yourself to these other parties in the deal as like, we are the most attractive buyer. Like, let's just dance. Where, depending on the market, obviously there's a supply demand dynamics. Some deals are more desirable than others, but like, I appreciate that the brand you've created is, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Come on. Like, we're good for it. You want to sell. And you've proven it out several times over, dozens of times over. So I like that philosophy from the investor's perspective of like, my brand, my marketing is about making your job easy, making this deal smooth, and we'll take it from here and do what we do.
And just, for me, I know as a seller in the space, when I get, into contract, of course we do our diligence on buyers, but it's like, it's a family or local investor, and we have no idea if they're really going to close. I mean, just in the last year, we've had two buyers that on the last week of escrow of the due diligence period backed out. I don't know why. Everything was going great. They, whatever reason it was, and it's like that's a bummer for our team. And the broker who then took it off the market, didn't field new offers, let everyone know it's in contract, and then for really no reason that they even tell you, they backed out. It happens, but it's like, for me, that's a big mystery going into every escrow we do. It's like, okay, like I think they'll close, but that's a family with who knows what's going on with their dynamic and where the money's really coming from. Everyone shows you their funds, but it's like, are those really earmarked for this deal? They're in a 1031 exchange, but are there 9 other properties that 3 other properties that they've also nominated, et cetera, 3 total, I guess it is. And so I think that for us, having a buyer who we know will close is very valuable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, going from that buyer negotiation process, moving over to the tenant negotiation process. So you take on a deal, you've got a new property, you've got a roster of tenants, you see value add potential. When you inherit under market rents, how do you balance having that increase, that conversation about a fair rent uppage with tenant retention?
Of course.
Because they've factored in certain numbers into their business model. People don't like change. Correct. How do you approach those conversations?
Great question. It's a big aspect of our business, of course. And so this happens all the time where we buy properties and tenants get nervous because it's a new owner. So the first thing I do before we have conversations about where's your rent is we implement a substantial remodel of the property. Right. So now there's a site that right now we're wrapping up in the San Diego market. And the property has had forever, right down the middle, big like concrete planter which makes every customer have to drive behind the back building, right? So it's 2 buildings, and in the middle there's this barrier. So it's like customers that go in, it's just like not like an easy site to access. So we immediately went to the city, got a permit, opened it up. So now all these people can cross over. So like someone shopping at the whatever tenant can go across and grab, whatever it is. So that just made it better. There was landscaping that was blocking all the tenants, literally, like that's been there for 20 years. So we immediately had a landscaping plan and went from these tall, awkward shrubs to nice plants. So now all these cars driving by that never knew that nail salon was back there. It's like, oh, nail salon, I want to stop in. We upgrade the facade, where we do a new monument sign, right? And so tenants suddenly, their employees, their customers are saying, this is pretty cool, what's going on here? So they're seeing a new customer, new faces coming in. But folks that are checking it out, oh, it's fun to be, to finally see this plaza improved. Let me stop in for the first time. So they see that, number one, right? And then they say, okay, like this landlord just came in and just put like $500,000 in improvements in, right? And so we then go in and, they expect something at that point. And it's not this thing where it's like, oh, this person came in and jacked our rents and did nothing, which I think is frowned upon, of course. If we did that, we would have, I don't think that we would do well if we just went in and just like jacked rents and it's like, well, good luck. But I think if you ask our tenants historically, for example, there was, I'll just share this, I've never shared it before. That first deal we bought, there was a tenant there named Joe. It was Red Wing Shoes. He'd been there for 40 years. Franchisee, nice guy. And he didn't speak to me much during the process. He was expecting this guy to come in and like flip the property. So we went in, we improved it. He literally wouldn't talk to me. I respected him, but he wasn't sure where we were going with things. And and at the end, we sold it, and he sent me either a note or he called me, but it was like, Don, you came in here, you fixed my awnings, you created a monument sign, you fixed the parking lot that needed it, you upgraded this and that, and I'm proud of what you did. Okay, which have a moment here, but
oh my gosh,
yes,
that's so sweet.
So it's like we take pride in that part of this. I would not be doing this if we were going in and, there are buyers out there that look for under market rent and they don't put a penny in the site. They don't care about the tenant. They'll go in and they'll be like, hey, burger restaurant, your rent is $4,000 for 20 years. Now it's going to be $8,000 or leave. Okay. There are buyers that do that. And like, I wouldn't want to be in this business if that's what I was doing. That would not be, that wouldn't feel good when I went home. I'm not going to make a bunch of money because that's not a win-win. That's scarcity mindset. Okay. So we go in after that happens and all I want is a market rent. Right. And I think just like, when you rent an apartment, if you're paying $4,000, and your neighbor's paying $2,000, it's odd, right? Like they should be paying $4,000. I don't want $5,000. I don't want a penny over market ever. Okay. And so we'll go in and have an open dialogue and say, look, and this happened recently. This woman has been paying the same rent for 20 years. The same rent, not even triple net.
That's
the same
nice.
Rent.
Nice
for 20
for her,
years.
yeah.
And so, she might see a 50% markup in rent or whatever percent. And then, I say, look, you have been getting a great discount for, a long time. The rent is this. Do your research as well. We went and did research for what 1,000 feet in this market is. Okay. Here's the range. We want to be in the middle of it. Like, let us know how we can get, like, do you disagree that this should be the rent? Like, and we're not like, do it by tomorrow. It's like, let's go do research.
Have a conversation.
Like, and I say, look, we made calls. Here's the properties in the area that we researched. You do the same, and let's find out where it should be. But at that point, like you're meeting at a property that looks great. It's got suddenly there's lighting at night, where before people were afraid so that evening business wouldn't be there. Now it's there. So, I can't think of a tenant in all these years that based on that was like, I'm out. Because, by definition, a tenant who's a viable tenant can pay a fair market rent, right? That is, from their side, a win-win, right? And so, I take a lot, it's something that they would take really seriously. And so, we also give a lot of tenants who are going to remodel, who come in, TI allowances. A lot of buyers would never give mom and pop tenants TI allowances, which I think is crazy. Someone is going to invest $300,000 in my space, right? I mean, of course it's worth talking about me offsetting some of that, right? If it's a tenant that's proven themselves, et cetera. And so, we again look for a win-win. I want to add value, and my hope is that the increase in traffic and their customers and their sales
it makes
more
up
than
for
offsets.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
It's all about, again, it keeps coming back to increasing the pie. I think it makes a lot of sense, the strategy of like, I'm just going to prove my value like crazy before you even have these conversations,
100%.
because you're proving yourself through your actions as opposed to the words you say.
Of course.
And then you can come to that conversation with all this, well, like, I'm proving that I believe in this property.
Exactly.
And I believe in the tenants that are already in it.
Yeah.
So let's have this realistic conversation, because things have to pencil, of course. Yeah. But if I can help you bring more business to your shop.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
It also costs me less, and I tell them this. I go, look, if you stay and renew, it's better for me than if I get a new tenant. So there's room to talk, and let's.
Yeah, you save on marketing.
I'm just putting all
save on brokerage fees.
I put all the cards on the table. I speak to them just like this. I'm speaking publicly here. They can all listen to this podcast. It's the same message. It's like, I want you to win. I want a rent that you guys agree is a fair market rent, and let's find any way we can to make it work. And I think it almost always does. I will say, if the market rent is $2,000, right, and they're at $1,500, and that $500 makes or breaks it, right, on the tenant, I think that there's a bigger conversation as well, right? And it's like are you taking too much risk for a profit? If they're making $30,000 a year on their business, right, they're taking a lot of risk. And it's, there's market forces that will tell them, hey, like $30,000 a year to be here all day, taking the risk, dealing
paying
with everything, paying
insurance,
employees, the headache factor. Maybe they should ask themselves that question as well. It's like, sometimes they're making, they've set up their business in a way that the rent's been so low that maybe they don't have the extra person. Perhaps their hiring decisions would be different, or marketing decisions different. If the rent was like equal playing field, kind of fair for everyone.
But it sounds like you're willing to have that conversation with them too, and a lot of it's coming from a place of
100%.
Respect and transparency. And obviously it's their decisions, who they hire, how they do marketing,
Correct.
what they sell if they're a
100%.
retailer. But it's all, again, the more transparent you can be, the more honest you can be, the more you can be solution oriented, as opposed to just focusing on the friction of a combat scenario.
Yeah, and we give them time. We we ask them, what can we do to help your business as well? It's like the lighting at night one came up a lot years ago when I asked that question. A lot of people were like, look, at nighttime I'm afraid to leave, especially like in the winter and the fall, it's dark earlier, so a lot of owners neglect the lighting, don't really think it makes a difference. And so we'll come in and suddenly like they have a big boost in sales when it gets dark outside. So it's like things like that help them more than saving $300 a month in rent would, I think.
There's a lot of levers to be pulled in those conversations.
I totally agree.
I want to be mindful of time, because we got to get into StripMallGuy.
Having too much fun.
I know. I could keep talking for hours,
Time
honestly.
flies.
I was talking about, we're not Joe Rogan earlier, but
We're turning into Joe Rogan.
turning into Joe Rogan. But before I get away from the retail side, which operators are you most bullish on in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's individual operators, not a niche. It's not a taqueria or a burger or whatever it is.
The people.
I like great operators will make it work. They like if they have a few locations, they know what their food costs are. They know how to hire. They know what cards to play. And so I focus on great operators. And that advice has brought me a long way, I would say.
Yeah. Let's get into StripMallGuy.
Yeah.
The StripMallGuy. Where to begin? Why start? Why start just saying your stuff on social media?
So I'm going to surprise you and tell you that I'm a little conflicted about what the StripMallGuy brand has, how it's evolved.
Yeah.
It's really helped our business tremendously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it came 20 years into my career. So now, I'll meet people in the industry that I didn't know before. They're like, oh, I love your stuff. And then they're surprised that I actually own and been buying strip malls. Right. And so, so I'm definitely getting known more for this social media brand, which happened by accident. I had zero plan of creating a social media brand. Right. And so, things are, and we're going really well up to that point. And I was proud of at that point it was 30 something deals that I bought. And so it's interesting to go from I think I'm an expert in this little niche of the real estate world, and taking pride in building that. Now it's like all about the social media person, and it's like I'm on events that are industry events with folks that meet me and we talk, and they're like, "Oh, you actually own strip malls?
No,
you're in the
you're like,
business?"
yes, I do.
Yeah. So it's fun. So I mean, it's been totally great, deal flow wise, recruiting, you name it. But again, I mean, the backstory is I started it on an airplane almost 4 years ago to kill time anonymously, expecting to shut it down after a day.
Yeah.
It was just this thing that I did to just, it was an hour left on the flight, and I was always afraid to tweet under my name, because what if an investor or a tenant or whoever, an employee reads it. And
the internet is forever.
Correct. But I also am bothered by the narrative that is out there from, quote, influencers in real estate, which is like, take on as much debt as you can, and everything is passive and easy, and just get in, and it only goes up.
Yeah.
All these things that actually make you lose money, that, ideas that grew in popularity over the last X amount of years, I got tired of reading that. And so, one day I said, let me just put out there what I think is the real way to look at real estate, which, you have to be a niche expert. It's really hard. If you take on a lot of debt, it can wipe you out. People lose money in real estate all the time, right? And so, it's hard. It takes a long time to build your business. It takes 10 years of really hard work every day to start seeing real wealth, right? I think like the real narrative. And so I didn't know that there was an audience for it. And, it was anonymous. So by definition, I didn't want to get anything out of it because I was going to be anonymous. And, when it started growing, it freaked me out.
Yeah.
Right. I was like 5,000 followers, 10, and so I was very weird about like not telling anybody about it. I didn't want to shake up my career in any way.
Yeah.
And then and then I just kept going, and over time, thinking more and more about the anonymous versus not. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of a one-way street. So it's like once you put yourself out there, you're kind of out there, and there's a lot of negative that comes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative that comes with being out there.
It's not a conversation. It is shouting into the void, and then sometimes things will shout back. Good things, also bad things, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you never really know where it's going to go, but ultimately for me, the hardest part of the business for me from the first deal is, when's that next deal coming from? It's like, great, we just bought Temecula. Okay, now what? Right? Like, I was always worried about how many deals will I do next year. And so, Colin Matthews actually, gave me this, what I like to call as an intervention. It wasn't really, but we had breakfast on the day of his podcast, and he's like, Don, drop the whole, anonymous thing. Come on. I'm like, no, never, Kyle. I'm an introvert. I don't want to go there. And he's like, Don, every week I get at least a call from someone who has a deal for you that doesn't know how the heck to get a hold of you. I was like, oh. He's like, so imagine how many people out there, you know, like if they're calling me, imagine how many deals you're missing out on. So I was like, no, I can't be. And, you know, and then start thinking about it, because like if I can solve the problem of where's my next deal coming from, that would be like the holy grail of real estate, right?
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
And so, I made the decision, you know, after talking to my wife, whatever. It's like, what does this mean, and what have you? And so, you know, did that about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
I remember because we were emailing. We were trying to schedule a podcast.
Yeah.
And we're like, how are we going to do this? Are we
Yeah.
going to video you? Are we going to put the little face on?
Yeah. And then like Real Deal ended up doing, you know, I think a good job with it. And so, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. And on the day that article came out on Real Deal, you know, my wife was late in her pregnancy, and it's like we were like in the hospital dealing with it. So it was the wrong day for that all to happen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, I was kind of like, okay, this is going on, and, you know, when's the baby coming, and all that. And so, you know, it worked out. It's been definitely mostly good. Helped our deal flow tremendously. Helped us in so many ways. You know, whatever I can do to get, like, you know, the StripMallGuy brand out there, which makes brokers think of us and make us do, you know, more deals, is good for my LPs, good for me long term. And you know, like we can talk about the negative stuff, but it's been overall, you know, I would say a real positive.
Yeah, the way I'm seeing it is, it's giving you a lot of opportunity to continue doing what you really like to do.
Correct.
Which is provide value to people, whether it's through finding a new deal.
Yep.
You know, we were talking off camera about, you know, bringing up Kaylin, bringing up Tuba to the Gala, which we'll get into in a little bit, and creating opportunities for other people in the industry because you've been able to build this, this whole brand.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that sharing element that I think is a really great thing.
This thing just came out of such left field for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so the Gala is a way of giving back. I mean, you know, like there's a lot of folks that are working on cool things and maybe good at what they're doing, but they're not known. They're not like out there. No one really pays attention because they don't have a platform. And so, you know, folks like Michael Hughesby, who was, you know, he was a DLA Piper. He worked on our fund documents. He's a great securities lawyer. And, you know, one day I'm like, oh, Michael Hughesby, like you should go on X, Twitter at the time. And he's like, no, you're crazy. I'm a lawyer. And I'm like, look, it's a massive audience. You just never know. So he ended up doing it. And now he left the law firm, started his own law firm. He's writing a book now. He's got I don't know how many lawyers. It's changed his life. And so, but like he's a really good dude. He's a really good lawyer. And, you know, like besides that one first post and whatever, a few others, like he takes it from there. Like, you know, I can't take too much credit because ultimately, you know, he and Kaylin, Tuba, all these folks have the talent. I mean, it's them. Yeah. And so same thing for me. I mean, you know, Keith Wasserman early on, and you know, a bunch of the folks in real estate Twitter at the time who did that for me. You know, Keith didn't know me at all. Keith started sharing my stuff from day like 3, like every day. He would just quote tweet it to his 50,000 whatever, like huge audience. Yeah. And Mark Gilbert and all these folks in real estate Twitter did it for me. They literally, you know, they helped me out. So it's like I feel like, you know, I want to give back. The Gala is another reason, you know, is another reason that we're having the Gala, is giving back, celebrating this crazy, amazing community.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I'm curious, you know, it came out of left field, this growth.
Totally.
You
like
know, and
left field, beyond the fence, different town.
What is that? That's not even a baseball.
Yeah.
And, you know, you said it came out of a need to combat the weird, like, get rich quick, scheming, like 0% down. You know, I mean, there are people who have been very lucky. How many doors do you own? Yeah. And you know, I think the authenticity coming from that willingness to say the thing is hard and prove out that the thing is hard is something that a lot of people resonate with, even though they like wish the other thing was really true. Yeah. So keying into that authenticity, that truth, that just like, here's like, again, the meat and potatoes, the sweat, the blood, the tears. How do you I guess, like, you know, you said it is them. It is their talent. It is Kaylin, Tuba, Mike posting themselves. But what do you think is the thing that they heard that you shared with them? Because they're posting things that are truthful to them.
Yeah. I mean,
that is spread.
Yeah, so I don't know what the formula is. I just know that for me, the idea was to share information just to share it. There's nothing I was looking for in return. And just be an open book. There's no secrets. Like, you know, here's what I know. I want to just tell you because it'll help you. A lot of people think you're helping the competition. Why would you do that? Which, you know, that's a scarcity mindset that a lot of people have and can't graduate from, I think. And so I think for them, Michael is sharing things that, you know, we paid a lot of money to learn the things that he is sharing about securities laws, setting up a fund, 506c, you know, the way that funds are structured, the way that promotes work, you know, all these things, you know, and Kaylin is sharing the journey of a young person that is in commercial real estate, which is a hard business.
Yeah.
And what is she doing every day? Same with Tuba. Kaylin's very unfiltered, which I think helps her a lot. I mean,
that's her brand.
Exactly, but like her brand is her though.
Yes,
there is no brand that she is, right? And so I think all of them are just sharing openly and are like, I don't know what's going to come out of this for me, right? And you know, and there's that, you know, Kelly Clarkson moment of like, you know, it's like, this is crazy that it's happening, and I think everyone that watches it happen to them is happy for them genuinely.
Yeah.
Right, so it's, you know, they are trying to be helpful. They're good, positive people. Yeah. You know, and they'll share when it's hard, as well, not just like all the wins. You know, Kaylin's out there talking about how when she cold calls, like some people are mean to her or they hang up, or you know, and that's things that no one's out there saying, oh, like today was a really hard day, I was hung up on, whatever it is. Like people need to hear that part, and all these quote influencers out there that are just, you know,
making it glamorous,
trying to sell a course. The course thing, don't even get me started on courses.
I have strong opinions about courses. We can talk offline about that.
Off the record on that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's that value add. It's that service mindset. And I think it's really incredible what can naturally arise in terms of opportunity, connection, creativity, if you lean into that service mindset. I think it's awesome. Yeah. It's very energizing to see. I'm sure it's very energizing to be a part of. So, you know, we talked about the gala a little bit. Yep. My producers, which is me, would be remiss if we didn't ask about the story behind this event, because we're going to talk about this. We're going to release this right before.
Yeah, so gala, exciting. May 1st. It's going to be amazing this year, about 250 people. The gala started a little bit like the account did, where it's like, you know, let me just try something and see what happens. Yeah. So it was, I think this year is the 3rd annual gala. The first one was just when I was anonymous, and I'm like, you know what, like it'd be fun to meet the people that, you know, we are talking with online all day. In a way, it really is a community. A lot of us spend more time talking to them than maybe some of our friends and family, right? And so I was like, you know what, let's keep it small, 40, 50 people. And then Crexi came, you know, Mike was like, hey, I'll pay for this. I'm like, this is incredible. And so tried it out, not knowing what to expect. Beth Azor came on to co-host it with me, and it was fun. You know, everyone had a great time. There was friendships built. Deals ended up happening from that first one, and then so, you know, we said, let's do it again. And so it was going to be a bigger budget. So Place for Trep and Agora stepped in last year to allow us to happen at Peak, which is one of the best venues in America, really. It's, you know, Hudson Yards, 101st floor.
Gorgeous views.
It's crazy. Not a cheap place, so we need to sponsor it. I don't make money on this thing. It all goes back into the event. And so, so it's become, you know, last year was amazing. Jeff Blau came out. He's like, you know, I want to be there. And so it went awesome. We did red carpet. A lot of the media that covers real estate was there last year. Real Deal, Biz Now, Commercial Observer, etc. And a lot of those videos went viral. You know, the brands were everywhere, and so, you know, I think that folks wanted to, you know, let's do it again. I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna do it again.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and so we said, well, let's you know, get more people in this year. up the ante. I wish to get everyone that wants to join us for the gala. I wish we can accommodate them. That would be amazing to do like a huge, Radio City Music Hall something. In 1 year, I think
StripMallGuy convention.
Yeah, I think that we will last year. Bob Knackle came on last year as a co-host as well. Love Bob, obviously, and and his brand makes the event even more credible, of course. And so and his reach is amazing. And so can't talk about the gala without talking about Bob.
Yeah.
Of course. And so, this year is again, and what is the gala? The gala is a celebration of folks doing great things, mostly in real estate, and using social media to really, get to that next level that they really never dreamed of. And so we're in that room celebrating, hanging out like with the folks that are working hard, on social media every day, giving, building a brand, building an audience. And so it's really a celebration of community and the folks that are make up that community.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I think I can probably guess the answer to this because we've been talking about it this whole time.
Yeah.
But what do you hope trickles out of this gathering for the broader commercial real estate or social media community?
Yeah.
Because obviously everyone can't go, but like it's a sharing of ideas, it's a sharing of experiences. What do you hope goes outward, ripples outward from this gathering?
Yeah,
for the
first
rest
of all,
of people?
folks will make new friends, for sure. Like new real relationships will come out of this event. Deals will happen. Folks will help each other, lift each other up, and I want ultimately for people who are not really taking social media seriously to say, look who's at this event. Look at these people who are doing crazy, huge things. They could be anywhere, in the world that night, and they fly to, New York City. They're getting something out of giving online, and so to spread the idea that sharing online and helping other people and being part of this community is helpful for everyone, I think would be awesome. And I want people to walk away thinking that was great. I want to do it again next year, and we'll have it be bigger this next year as well. But look, for me personally, of course, right? It's a giving event, but the StripMallGuy brand, it's great for our business, ultimately as well. So I do have LPs. I have a fiduciary duty, which is very important. So, obviously the things I do in running a fund have to also be good for our business. So, I'm not going to say it's only a giving thing. I'm getting a lot of it, a lot of it as well. So, again, it's a win-win.
It's the bigger pie.
Yeah.
That's what I knew the answer would be.
Yeah.
Just to tie that with a bow, like I was just at Beth Azor's conference earlier last month, and it's the same openness, the same like, let me introduce you to this person. Oh, this person's interested in this idea. Maybe you can collaborate.
Totally.
And again, because it's commercial real estate, it has real world impact on the communities that people work in.
The gala feels like a family reunion. It really does.
I love that. I'm so excited. It's going to be such a fun time.
Coming up. I
know. 3 weeks. 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Wow. I got to write my speech.
I know. We got to talk after this.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful of your time. We could keep going on and on and on. But I got a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Oh, man.
To ring us in at the end here. I probably also know the answer to this question. But if you were handed $50 million today and you had to invest it immediately, where and what and why?
I would never invest money immediately.
Ooh,
I would just keep doing what we're doing. Yeah, I think investing money immediately is a red flag. I would put it in T-bills, short-term T-bills.
Okay.
And wait, 30 days at a time and wait for the next strip mall deal.
Let it cook.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'll take it.
That's my only answer.
What is the craziest way or story you found a deal besides social media?
Oh, man. Wow.
Usually I ask, is social media the answer? But for you, it's definitely.
I've never been asked that. So I wish I had it. It's one of the few times where it's like, let me just think through my deals.
Yeah. Or even just met somebody where it led to a deal eventually.
Yeah. I'm trying to just think through our deals. Yeah, there was, when I was a broker, we had a client that, I sold properties to and for. She'd been, in the business a long time, and, we ended up buying several deals from her. over the years. So I went from being a 22-year-old kid in awe of this amazing woman who was buying and selling strip malls to then buying and selling strip malls from her. That was one. There's deals that I bought that my mentors passed on.
Oh
yeah that gone really well, and so actually bought one from him.
There you
about
go.
5 years in the business.
Steph Curry sold to you, huh?
Exactly. And so we bought. It was a stereo shop that was vacating. He was like, he didn't want to deal with it. So I had a relationship with Sherwin-Williams, and I knew that they were looking in East San Jose for a while, and it was right off the off ramp in East San Jose, and we called Sherwin-Williams, and we leased them that space, ended up selling it later on. So that was it was a win-win. He made money on it, didn't want to deal with the headache. We leased it, etc. So yeah, it's funny where deals come from. You really, really know. And plus letters, or we would send letters out for years. I mean, I would send owners letters of this is before the like digital cameras really were a big thing. We would just print out on the envelope, we would just print a color photo of their property and just send it to them. It was a regular letter. Like, how did you get a photo of our, like, it was before Google Earth, right, and Street Map. Like, how did you come up with, I actually went to your property. I know what I'm talking about here.
I'm glad they didn't think that was threatening.
Yeah,
like
some
here's
of them
a
were
photo
like,
of your property.
They were confused. They're like, is it for sale? Are you selling my property? No, we're not. We just thought, it'd be cool that you would know that we actually drove by your property.
Yeah, which I do hear a lot. A lot of people don't actually go to the site. So.
Oh, yeah. A lot of owners are like, have you been there? What color is the paint? What color is this, that? They
gotta know.
You
gotta have your answers. This is probably, I know this answer, I think, but favorite tool or software you use on the job?
Google Earth. Those aerials.
I was gonna say Twitter. So.
No, I love pulling up. An aerial. I scan it. What's in the area? Like that Chick-fil-A just came in. That tells me a lot. Is it on the going home side? Going to work side? Where are they building housing? I could stare at aerials for hours. Yeah.
The creation of Google Earth. That story is actually very interesting. If you haven't looked into it, the company that created it, and then when Google bought it.
Terra something, I think they're called.
I think so. Yeah. Maybe. And then finally, what is the most common misconception about what you do or you think being an investor in general is?
I think that people, a lot of people out there are like, he is part of the strip mall world, which makes, America ugly, and why they're not building housing there, et cetera. So, it's as if I've invented strip malls, right? And so, to me, they don't know that I go in and actually put money in making those properties look better, create jobs, et cetera. They think that folks in our industry are just in it to just flip and extract from the community rather than adding value. And so that's one. And then online, I think that a lot of people think that maybe he has a team that write his posts or et cetera. And so it's all authentic. It's all me writing them. I've never hired anyone to write anything for me. No one has my account access, et cetera. And so I think those two things for sure.
Yeah. Well, you tell them all right now. You just did.
It really is me.
Don, this has been so much fun.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Feel so good after this conversation. I really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thank you, guys. And thank you to Crexi for all the support over the years, and to Mike. I mean, I really feel a deep friendship with your whole team. So.
Yeah, a lot of simpatico. I think we all want to make that pie bigger.
It's real.
At the end of the day.
For sure.
Yeah. So, where can people find you if they want to connect?
Find me on X, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Our website, Town Center Capital. So we're out there. We're buying deals. We're expanding. Next time you have a strip mall for sale, et cetera.
Yes.
Reach out to myself, James, Andrew, Maria, and our team. We'll let you know if we, want
you got all cash ready to go if it's the right deal.
Bring it on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Thank you, everyone who tuned in today. I I love this episode. And if you enjoyed it, please do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast and you can sign up to get the next one delivered straight to your inbox. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app or check out our YouTube channel for video recordings of this and every other episode. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.